The twins were 18 months old and identical in every diagnostic category that existed. Same height within a centimeter, same weight within 200 grams, same blood type, same pediatric chart notes at every well visit since birth. Healthy, well-developing, no concerns. Petra and Sven Bakshi had been told repeatedly by their pediatrician, their respective sets of parents, and several people in their apartment building who had no medical credentials but strong opinions, that identical twins were the same person twice and everything about them would track together. Their golden retriever, Hazel, had apparently not received this information. Hazel was 3 years old, 61 pounds, a deep amber coat, darker than most Goldens, with a gentle face and the disposition of an animal that had decided the world was fundamentally fine and acted accordingly. She had been introduced to the twins the day they came home from the hospital and had transitioned from previous only pet to guardian of two with the smoothness of someone who had been briefed in advance. The behavior started on a Wednesday in February. Sven had set out small portions of a new food, a nut-adjacent grain blend in ceramic bowls on the low plate table they used for meal times, and both boys, Nick and Cass, had reached for their respective bowls. Hazel, who normally occupied the corner of the kitchen during meal times with the patience of an animal that has accepted the existence of things it cannot have, crossed the room, placed herself beside Nick's chair, and nudged the bowl away from him with her nose. Not Cass's bowl, only Nick's. Sven moved her and let Nick eat. Nick ate without incident. Cass ate without incident. Sven filed it as something dogs did. It happened again Thursday. Same food, same bowls. Hazel went directly to Nick, not Cass, and nudged his bowl with such precision that it moved off the table edge before Sven could stop it. He was irritated. He made a new portion. He put Hazel in the hallway. She scratched at the door for the duration of the meal, he told Petra that night. She had been a maternal fetal medicine nurse for 6 years. She had the professional tendency to classify things in terms of mechanism rather than coincidence. She said, "She's distinguishing between them somehow. We should understand how before we dismiss it." Sven thought Petra was overthinking. The following Monday, the food was different. A smoothie pouch from a different brand, same ingredients listed on both packages. Hazel went to Nick. She went to his side of the table and positioned herself there in the way she had, not threatening, not loud, a gentle, persistent wall between his hand and the pouch. Cass drank his smoothie. Nick, redirected by Hazel's position, reached around her and got a partial drink before Petra moved her. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Petra had been taking notes since Thursday. She had 8 entries. Hazel had intervened with Nick 7 times and Cass 0 times. The foods were not identical across incidents. The common thread was a category. Petra looked at the ingredient list across all 8 incidents and found it on the 5th red, a tree nut derivative used as an emulsifier in several of the products, listed under a name she had never seen as an allergen flag. She called the pediatric allergist the following morning. She described the pattern. The allergist was a man named Dr. Branson Cho, 12 years of practice, and he did not respond with skepticism. He said, "Bring both boys in. We'll test." The skin prick test results came back in 20 minutes. Nick had a moderate sensitivity to a specific tree nut protein. Cass did not. The response in Nick was sufficient to produce a reaction. Not immediately life-threatening at current exposure levels, but sufficient to produce symptoms, and with repeated exposure, the sensitization could increase. Dr. Cho explained, nut allergies in infants are frequently asymptomatic at early exposures and escalate non-linearly. A child can tolerate low-level contact multiple times and then have a significant reaction at a subsequent exposure with no warning. The fact that Nick had consumed small amounts without visible incident did not mean there was no reaction occurring at the cellular level. He said, the dog was detecting a scent compound that produced a different signature from Nick than from Cass. Nut allergens produce measurable immunological responses in sensitized individuals, changes in cortisol, in skin chemistry, in exhaled volatile compounds that begin before the human registers any symptom. A dog with regular exposure to both children and to that child's specific baseline would detect that deviation. She went to one child consistently, Dr. Cho said, because one child was reacting consistently. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They drove home with the allergy plan Dr. Cho had written, the list of foods to avoid, the guidance on what to watch for, and the prescription for an emergency medication they hoped never to use. Petra sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window. She thought about the smoothie pouch, the way Hazel had placed herself at the table, the way she had moved to Nick and not Cass, every single time, for 3 weeks, with the consistency of a machine running a test. She had not been confused. She had not been unpredictable. She had been reading something in the air around one child that was different from what was in the air around the other. She had been right every single time. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Hazel was on the kitchen floor when they came through the door. She raised her head. She looked at both boys. Her tail moved twice. She put her head back down. Petra sat on the floor beside her. She put her hand on Hazel's back. Hazel pressed into the touch and exhaled. She had been trying to say the same thing for 21 days. Nobody had known how to listen. The next story is about a Bernese mountain dog who started sleeping in front of a specific closet and the chemical behind the door that had been building for 6 weeks.